Hey everyone. I am going to get started on the next unit today, the unit on the legislative branch. And so we'll be covering mostly just advantages of people who are in office already when they are running for re-election. So if you can bear with me as we get going. Just really only one slide today worth of notes. And it's this one right here. So we'll look at some websites. So, legislative branch in the Constitution, there are very few qualifications for the House and the Senate. They have an age requirement and a requirement of how long you've been a U.S. citizen. But the one that I just want to focus on is the age. Not a big deal, really, necessarily. I don't think it's that controversial. But if you think of it, generally, people will know how old you have to be president of the United States, maybe not House and the Senate. And so if you just think of it in terms of going backwards from what is most important, I guess, to least important, to be president, you have to be 35. So then you think of the House and the Senate, and which one of these is more important, more sort of a better position, and that'd be the Senate. So you back up 5 years, so that to be a senator, you have to be 30. And to be a House member, you have to be a minimum of 25. So 25 for the House and 30 for the Senate. In the last unit, we mentioned the court case McCulloch v. Maryland. Well, McCulloch v. Maryland was very important, and it comes to this chapter in terms of the legislative branch in Congress, because McCulloch v. Maryland, that Supreme Court case, gave Congress the ability to do things that were not outlined in the Constitution. In McCulloch v. Maryland, in this case, the Supreme Court said that because of the necessary and proper clause, or also called the elastic clause, that Congress could do things that were necessary and are helpful to the United States. And so that would allow them to go beyond the powers listed in Article 1, Section 8. And that, in this case, allowed them to make a national bank. So McCulloch v. Maryland, its relevance here is because it made it so the national government could do a lot of things that it does today. So the necessary and proper clause allowed them to expand their powers. So the big topic for today, though, is the advantage of incumbency. Incumbents are people who are in office, and in this case, running for re-election. So incumbents, when they're running for a re-election in the House and the Senate, they almost always win, and we'll show you those percentages. They're extremely high. So if you are in office and you're running against a challenger, someone who's obviously not in office, and the two of you are running in a November election, then you are probably going to win if you're the incumbent. And so as political scientists have gone through and they've studied this, and they said, well, okay, why do these people almost always beat the challenger? They've come up with this list of reasons. So one is money. You are the incumbent, you're in office, you run a campaign before, maybe for decades. And so you already kind of have a system in place with money coming in, an account. You have groups out there that support you, and so they're giving you more money, which goes into the next one. So you're more likely to have money. Generally you don't have a lot of millionaires, multi-millionaires running for the Congress, at least, maybe when they're in office, they become richer, but you usually don't have people who are the challenger who are extremely wealthy. Now, sometimes you will, but a lot of times they're obviously more like regular folk, but they're upper middle class maybe. And so political action committees are also going to be more likely to support you, but they're partly, these are groups that want something generally. They want to get you in office because they want you to almost feel like you owe them something, and so that you will support their causes. So political action committees, it's kind of like a continuous cycle. It's like you get, it used to be the old debate, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Well, because you're an incumbent, you're more likely to win. And so the groups out there that are going to support one side or the other, they want to support the winner. So because you're the incumbent and you're more likely to win, they're going to give you more money and more support. And then because they give you more money and more support, you're more likely to win. And it just kind of keeps going and going. And so these groups that are going to give money, they don't want to be on the side of a losing candidate. And if it's 90% maybe that an incumbent is going to win, then why don't you endorse that person rather than the person who's a 10% chance? And so it just keeps the cycle going. If you are in office, if you're a current congressman or senator, you have the right of franking privilege. This is when you can send free mailings to your constituents, the people you represent in your district, or for a senator, the whole state. It's not supposed to be used as a campaign thing, but it generally is. So I don't get mailings ever in an odd numbered year. So if it's an even numbered year and it's getting closer towards election time, you'll get a thing in the mail that will say, I'm your representative, here's what I've been doing for my district in the Congress. That's how things are going. Like you can't really say, hey, vote for me, but that is a big benefit because they hear from you, see what you've been doing. If you're a challenger and you want to send a mailing out to the people in your district, which would be thousands and thousands and thousands of homes, then you have to pay for that. So that could be a big expense. Travel allowances, if you are, you're working in DC and you're maybe living in Cary, so you basically get free travel back and forth to your job, but also around your district. Again, not supposed to be for campaigning, but it might be to check on how schools are doing. You see that a lot in election years, or how roads are, or if there's a site that maybe there was a natural disaster, and so you get free, whereas someone else, there's a challenge, you have to pay for this. Casework is using your actual physical office to help the people in your area, and so that could be, it could be, one of the examples I always use is if someone's going to a military school, they have to ask a representative or a senator for basically a nomination, like a letter of recommendation, and they're very limited in how many they can give out. But if they did nominate one of you and you got into Air Force or something like that, then whether you're Republican or Democrat, your parents, your family, your friends, you might all throw your support behind that person because you appreciate what they did. Well, that's just one instance, but it could be any number of things. It could be issues in the community. There could be, even though this wouldn't really be a national issue for a representative, it could be that local government hasn't responded and there's a pothole on Cary Parkway, and so you just call this office and you're frustrated, and then they call the people in the town of Cary, and the town of Cary fixes it. Well, now you're kind of happy that those people helped you out. So just the fact they have an office that they can help people can help them. Pork barrel spending. I'll show you some examples of this in a little bit. But this is when you're in office, you're in Washington, there's a budget bill coming up, and you get something in the budget that is going to be money for a project for something in your district. It could be money to repair roads or make a new bridge or whatever it is. And then you can tell people, hey, as representing you from this district, I've done that, like I've gotten that. And so that can help you win an election. Name recognition, people are going to know who you are. That's probably as important as anything here, because the challenger, no one probably knows who that person is, not that many people, and then they've heard your name before, so they go in and they check you off on the ballot box. Log rolling, that basically isn't necessarily a huge advantage, but it can help you get bills passed that you can then brag that some of your bills passed. So log rolling is just the process of meeting with other representatives, senators, and saying, look, I know we don't like each other's bill, but if you vote for my bill, I'll vote for yours, so you can get both bills passed. And by being there in Congress and working with other people, you can get bills passed, and you can get credit for passing those bills that might help your district. Now, generally in Congress, a safe district is one where if 2 years ago you won and you had more than 55% of the vote. So not that you won by 55%, that'd be a massive blowout, but that if you had 57% of the vote and whoever you beat had 43%, if that happened 2 years ago, you're pretty much safe in this next election because you won by 14 percentage points. That's huge. If maybe you won and you had 52% and the other person had 48%, well, a lot of people might say, you know what, that district is not necessarily guaranteed because that's a pretty close margin. So maybe a challenger could make up that difference from 2 years ago. So a safe district, you'll see that most districts right now are safe districts. Now, incumbency, all these things that I listed, they do help in the House of Representatives and the Senate. But they actually help members of Congress much more when they're running for re-election, even though, again, the Senate numbers are really, really high. And the rationale is because it's assumed that since the Senate only has 2 positions per state, and and only 1/3 of all Senate positions are up every 2 years because it's 6-year terms and they rotate them, that the people who are going to challenge for a Senate seat are going to be pretty good challengers. They maybe already were a congressperson, maybe they could have been a governor, they might be a real well-known business person. So they may, and with fewer seats and with like better challengers who have more money and are more well-known already, there is more focus put on those in a sense. And so that if there's a chance for a senator to, a challenger to beat an incumbent senator, then maybe the national party will get more involved and really try to get campaign behind that challenger, because there's only roughly 33 Senate seats up every 2 years, so compared to 435 House seats every 2 years. So basically the answer is that all these things help the House and the Senate, but they're going to be much more significant of a help to the House members. So I'm going to get out of this just for a second. I'll show you just some real quick examples of pork barrel. Pork barrel is this spending, this money that you get back to your district. One of the most infamous ever, never really happened, but this Bridge to Nowhere. This was something where you can see down here they were going to spend $230 million to give to Alaska to build a bridge from a town of 9,000 people to an island that had 50 people who lived on there and had a very small airport. So we were going to spend $230 million of tax dollars, and the public eventually prevented that from happening. They called it the Bridge to Nowhere. Boston's Big Dig, I knew a lot about this growing up in New England, and it was they basically were going to build a new bridge or two, massive, and tunnels and stuff. And this was a massive project that a lot of people would consider pork barrel, where the representatives from Massachusetts got, see, in 1982 it started. It was going to cost $3 billion, they said. It ended up costing $15 billion. But then they can say, hey, we get all this money to go to workers and people in Boston. And they have other examples of, Montana getting $740,000 to research the use of sheep grazing. Basically, every representative gets money to their area, and that's why one of the reasons we have such massive deficits in the country. And you can see the Department of Defense there. In 2014, more than $90 million was given for tank upgrades that they didn't even want. So pretty crazy stuff. Now, when I'm going to show you these last two things here, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So from 2018, here were throughout the last 40 years or 50 years, 60 years, here are the re-election rates. This is for the U.S. House members. So you see that it's always been over 80% get reelected. And if you look kind of over about 90% would be most years in the House of Representatives, it's actually over 90% get reelected. And then in the Senate, their reelection rates are very similar. So you see back there in 1980, it was just under 60, but it's been over since 1988. It's been over 80% or at 80% every single year, and sometimes at 90 or higher. So while the advantages are not quite as extreme in the Senate, it's still very, very likely that if you're the current person in office and you're running for re-election, you're probably going to beat the challenger in the Senate also. And then I don't have a lot of time left, but you can go to this if you ever want to look at it. 270 to Win. It updates all the time, even after elections. 270towin.com, really famous site. So they've taken the 2020 House races, and they've basically said, if you see that bar graph sort of, they said that there's 181 Democratic seats, so 435 total in the country. 181 Democratic seats are basically 100% locked up. No one's even going to pay attention to them because they've already decided who's won. And right now, this is July. So 158 Republican seats, those people are definitely going to win. And then there's, on the lighter blue, 27 pretty likely to go Democratic, and then 15 leaning Democratic, and the same thing on the red side. So you get to that point, and you're looking at what do they have here? 200 was at the top. It tells you 223 Democratic seats pretty locked up, and 193 Republican seats pretty locked up. And you can see where people are generally Republican and Democratic in the country too. So only 19 House seats out of 435 are really close. So anyway, that's what incumbency does. I appreciate it, and we will say bye for now. Thank you.